Of course, I have always loved my village, but I think my feelings have even intensified with age. My ancestors came from Sasun, Western Armenia. One can easily notice that the locality of the village is very similar to the one they used to live in. The higher in the mountains, the dearer to their hearts. You used to paint here in your childhood, so you liked to paint, didn't you? I have painted since early age. A regional students' exhibition was held when I was in my third year at school. It was a contest. I painted Agassi Khanjan's portrait and was awarded with a trip to a pioneer camp in Stepanovan. I still haven't realized up to the end why Agassi Khanjan. Mathematics turned out to be your first higher education specialty. How did it happen? I must say, I studied all my school subjects very well, and mathematics was not an exception. I was a high achiever, though I always painted. Even in my university, I put 2 personal exhibitions, of course in the capacity of a self-educated painter. Painting has always accompanied me, but it's now that I understand that Lord had decided that I was to be a mathematician before becoming a painter. And it's now that I realize how much mathematics has helped me during my years of study in Leningrad and generally in my art. This is astonishing. I had to know mathematics to become a painter. Trust me, I'm stating this fact with certainty now. How did you decide to go and study at Leningrad Academy? That is a very interesting story. By nature, I'm such a kind of a person who must achieve his goal after he makes a decision. My purposefulness and dedication have reached the degree of sickness. I was a 4th or 5th year university student when my exhibition was staged in the cinema house. It was after this that it became obvious that I had to continue studying art. I had even decided to leave before graduating from the university. There was a law at the time. You had to wait for 3 years. So, even though I had my degree work ready, I wanted to refuse, give it up, not to have to wait. Eventually, my elder brother made me defend my graduation work. It was already settled that I was to leave, as I felt lack of implementation skills to express what I felt. What classes did you attend there? I studied graphic arts for 2 years, and then I proceeded to the painting department. I studied graphics at academician Vetrogonsky's studio, who was a people's painter of Russia. I took my painting lessons at the studio of Boris Sergeyevich Ugarov, who was an outstanding, a magnificent teacher. Generally, I don't like confined space. Maybe that's because still a child, I opened my eyes and the Armenian Bar mountain chain was in front of me. The space has always been open before my eyes. In other words, there have been no walls confining my sight, which is the reason why I always choose areas with open plan sights. That is a matter of perspective. Here you take deep breath while painting, and that breath is exactly what I always need most. In any locality, first of all, I look for the range of colors of the object, as I have to feed myself with those colors to express the object. I never impose my subjective moment upon nature, as my subjective is far poorer as compared to what nature has. The range of colors passes through me and via me returns to the canvas. That is why I don't have, and I think no painter should have, his range of colors. The style is something different. It is the style that becomes yours. Can you see your house from here? No, it is in the village. Our house was one of the first in the village. These are new houses, new developments. I always seize any occasion to come to the village, and now I'm thinking of having my own home here, besides my parents' house where my brother stays. When I enter this house, I feel absolutely much better, much stronger. This house is of my age. It was built in 1955, the same year I was born. The most valuable thing about this house is that since then nothing has changed in it. In other words, it stands just the way it was initially built by my parents. This is the unaltered place where my parents lived and when I grew up along with my brothers. By the way, this balcony had a fatal consequence in my life. I was 5 years old when I fell down of this balcony. At that time it was very high, or it seemed high as I was little. Anyways, there were rocks down there. I fell down, it had seriously injured first of all my head, because of which I had speaking problems for many years. The painting gift livened up. My English manager used to say, the very same day you fell from the balcony, you became a painter. When he studied abroad, my mother directly transferred her school salary to him. My parents helped me a great deal.
Առաջափողից մաման դպրոցից ստանում աշխատավարձ գործում էր։ Արա պապան ուրեր են վաղ թոշակ ստանում է, դադի թոշակներ երկարում այդ, Առաջ վեր գրում էի։
In the beginning, of course, as long as mom and dad didn't want me to join the academy, they subjected me to blockade, so that I had hard times and went back. I had to work for about a year and a half. For example, I swept parks. After that, I worked as a firefighter. Did your parents know that you were cleaning parks? Yes, they did. They expected me to break and return home to go on with my science, but of course I withstood. And when in 1980s I entered the academy, mother began to help, of course. How did you receive your sister-in-law? She was a foreigner from overseas, wasn't she? How we received? In the beginning, mother didn't agree. Every time he came home from Leningrad, he would jokingly tell mother that he was going to bring home an Indian or Japanese woman. In the end, his jokes turned out to be true. He persuaded mother, and my parents went there, arranged a wedding, came back and continued feasting. A foreign national was something new for Shagharshik at that time. An Indian lady in Armenia, in Shagharshik. All the Tallinn authorities were here. They had come to see our Indian sister-in-law. Now they have wonderful Armenian children, don't they? Yes, very nice. Well-studying children that have great respect for elders. I find this most important. Once there were no trees in our village except for poplars, but as far as I remember, our garden has always been like this. My mother liked gardening very much, and now my dream is to move to the village. I have nothing else to do with big cities, and the children have grown up. The time is precious. More time should be given to work, because in classical painting, if your hands shake, you can't paint anymore. Now I badly need peace and my native land that brought me back to my village from Bangkok. Here are the rocks that brought me back. Abroad, I had ideal conditions, fame, anything I might need. But in the course of time, I grew more and more homesick, and most of all, I missed my birthplace. It was my village that brought me back. Probably I'll do my best works now when I eventually come to my rocks. You worked abroad, in Thailand, India. Yes, of course. It was interesting. It enriches not only the palate, but also the compositional thinking. There are no rocks in the countries where I painted, but I painted rocks in my canvases. Overseas, especially in Thailand, I was often accused of painting skies people had never seen. By the way, when you live in your country, you never feel how beautiful and magnificent it is. When you're abroad, it appears before your eyes like a kaleidoscope and finds its place in your works. Of course, without distorting the general spirit of your painting. I don't know whether or not it was my intuition, but I felt I needed to go abroad, and I left for Thailand. I had been to India and more or less knew the region, and I went there to do a series of paintings to get rid of this tense situation I was in. And the couple of months planned lasted for 8 years. This was my most fruitful period. Of course, it was very difficult, strange, unknown environment. But you know, maybe it was Lord's will that I met my first managers very soon. They were Englishmen from London. They at once agreed to be my managers. Their names were Nicola and Philip Greswell. First, they demanded my whole collection to be brought from Armenia, and then began their activities with England. As soon as I landed in Bangkok, I began painting very productively, something I hadn't done for a long time, though I had had all the conveniences here in Yerevan. For some reason, the Englishmen returned to England. They suggested that I should go with them, but I said I would never live in Europe. About a month later, I met my next manager, who was a Malaysian Chinese. Madame Maggie had a large gallery in Bangkok, and she immediately offered her services. She planned the exhibition, the first exhibition that took place in Bangkok National Gallery in 1999. This was a big exhibition with almost 200 paintings, though she had already sold almost 30% of the paintings beforehand. Of course, Mr. Bob, the Armenian consul, brought his moral contribution. He was so proud that he insisted that the Armenian flag should be there and the Armenian anthem should sound. It was very, very exciting. The exhibition was sensational. The whole top of Thailand were there. The king's immediate assistant opened the exhibition. Approximately 60 to 70 ambassadors participated in the ceremony. There were more than 2,000 people present. We worked together for about 3 years, and then she left for Malaysia. She used to say, "Let's go together, Edward," but my answer was negative. I stayed in Thailand, but it was already easy. Everybody seemed to know me. I must state that more than 80% of all my works were done in Thailand. If I say that the East, and particularly Thailand, had influenced on me, it wouldn't be true. The East interested me only as raw material for work. As to the cultural aspect, it has never had any influence on me. By the way, I take the moonlight skies of my paintings from the moonlight nights of my village. Since childhood I've been looking at it, and I haven't seen anything as bright in any other place. Both in Thailand and here in Armenia, people say I have made them up, as there can't be such moonlight nights. Well, how can I explain that they should come to my village and they would see the mentioned nights that are unbelievably light? We have an exhibition hall in the academy, and Edvard had put his personal exhibition there and invited me to attend. I had heard that he had lived abroad for many years, had serious achievements. I read in his catalogue about the numerous exhibitions he had had abroad, the people he knew, and the things they had written about him.
Կարդացի, որ ինչքան ցուցանտեսներ է ունեցել արտասահմանում, ինչքան մարդկանց հետ է ծանոթ, ինչքան մարդիկ գրել են իր մասին.
But when I saw his realist paintings, I got really surprised that he had managed to succeed without bending, curving and distorting, without betraying realism.
Առանց ծռմռվել realizmin չդավաճանելով եւ պետք է ասեմ որ անցել է շատ լավ.
I must state that he had good, serious schooling. He demonstrated also works dating back to student years, which showed that he had mastered a lot of skill at school. He had some portraits that were painted masterly, with generalizations. There were also landscapes, watercolors, but most importantly, all the works were done with love. It was obvious that he loved his work.
Ստեղծագործական աշխարհների ընթացքում էր արված, արտասահմանում էր արված, բնանկարներ կային, երևում էր որ նա սիրով է արել, երևում էր որ նա սիրում է այդ գործը, հետագայում ես
Watercolor is a very complicated sphere, and though many people try it, few are those that succeed. I find his portraits most successful. He has expressed himself most completely in regard to both color and graphics.
Հիմնականում դիմանկարները նրա մոտ ավելի հաջողված են եւ այդ դիմանկարներում է հենց ինքը լավ դրսևորել իրեն եւ իր գույնի առումով եւ գծանկարի առումով ինքը սովորել է.
He studied at Ugarov's studio, who used to be the president of the USSR Fine Arts Academy.
ԽՍՀՄ Գեղարվեստի ակադեմիայի պրեզիդենտն էր եւ նա նրա մոտ սովորել է այնպես որ
I know him.
ես իրեն վարովին գիտեմ.
I also know how he taught. There is another interesting thing. When I finish a work, it remains in front of my eyes for at least a couple of weeks, as every single millimeter has its important part in the canvas. I look at it for 2-3 weeks, and if there is nothing to add or change, then the work is complete in that context. I have known painter Edvard Sasun for many years, since the beginning of 1990s. All his children, and I must mention that he has 5 of them, studied at the school, the principal of which I was. I personally taught them, and I knew that their father was a painter. Well, a painter, there are many painters. Afterwards, I had the opportunity of seeing his album published in Thailand. I was simply astonished. I felt something like pain. We had such a painter, and why he wasn't in Armenia? Why we didn't know him? Well, personally I didn't. He came to my office about 3 years ago, and when he said who he was, I immediately jumped to my feet in a burst of inspiration. And my first question was, have you come as a guest or you have come to stay? This interests me most of all. I was very happy to learn that he had come to stay in Armenia thereafter. Since that day, our relations have grown into real friendship. I have seen him working both in his studio and in the field. I was surprised at the unique style in which he works. He works directly on canvas without doing anything on paper, no planning, no preparation, though the other painters I know act the way I mentioned. Edvard Sasun can paint talking to you. The brush springs quickly, follow one another, and suddenly you see that they turn into a wonderful landscape, exactly the same you can see in nature. I think his vigilant hawk eyes are exceptional. Today, Edvard Sasun is a person in whom I see 2 different people. One of whom is equal to me, to us, to the friends with whom we feast, talk, discuss everyday problems, who is always there for a friend, who will always help, especially when there is some handwork to do. But the other one is high, very high, at an inaccessible height for me and the mentioned friends. Today he is much more popular and in demand in Thailand, Europe, and particularly in England, where there are a number of collections. Unfortunately, people don't know him well enough here, but I hope that someday our nation will know and appreciate the virtue also. Do you maintain your contacts with your managers and collectors? Of course. When I finish my paintings, according to our agreement, they are the first people to be notified. I inform first my manager and then the collectors, as there are people who always enrich their collections. By the way, there are people who buy exceptionally my paintings, so I feel it's kind of my duty to tell them what I have done. There are about 10 collectors that always buy my works, and my once manager is among them. She has opened an Edvard Sasun fine art gallery in Bangkok, but it's her own collection, and she keeps enriching it. There are also people who have just a couple of my works, and of course I must mention the man who owns 209 of my works in all the possible genres. Last year I went to Moscow. Now I have the Ardina Gallery that works with me there. This year I joined the Russian Professional Artists Union. By the way, I'm not a member of the Armenian Painters' Union yet. My 55th birthday is coming next year, and an anniversary exhibition is to be put in Moscow. It's already settled. On March 18th, Moscow is staging that exhibition, and anniversary retrospective. In September, an exhibition is expected in Yerevan, and we have applied to the Painters' Union for February if they give the hall. They know it better. In any case, it's very pleasant when your homeland knows you.